Welcome, everyone, to Hort-Talk, episode 20, an HTA podcast, this week focusing on the HTA business improvement schemes. I'm Alex Jenkins, your host, and today I'm joined by three very special guests, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves.
I'm Gerald Ingram from Planters Garden Centre and Garden King in the Western East Midlands.
Hello, I'm Ruth Gowdy. I'm from Kiln Farm Nursery and we're based near Ipswich in Suffolk.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Spray from Pentland Plants in Loanhead near Edinburgh.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for agreeing to be part of this episode of Hort-Talk. So for those out there listening that don't know what I'm talking about when I say business improvement schemes, or as we know it, BIZ, can someone explain in your own words what BIZ is?
Well, here in the Midlands, we've got about 20 members. We get together probably 5 times a year, plus an excursion somewhere, and we discuss our business problems. It's a real eye-opener, I think, because you may have a problem and you suddenly start chatting to others and they've all got the same problem. So it's generally another 10 to 20 people who have got the same background to yourself, same operating issues as yourself. And it's just nice to get together on a social basis. So, we've made some really good friends on a social footing. So we'll occasionally go out with some of them for an evening out or a day out somewhere. So it's a good business footing, but it's quite informal. On top of all that, we also swap our figures so we know how we are benchmarking against other centres.
I'm not sure whether you do this, but in the East Anglian region, we also give feedback to each other on their centres. So we take it in turn to host. So there's 5 meetings in a year, and we will take it in turn. So if there's 15 people in the group, it means every 3 years we've all visited everybody else in that group, and for us in the mornings there'll be a group discussion about something that's going on, or perhaps a presentation, and then in the afternoon the hosts will perhaps ask us to consider something if they're going to redevelop, or if they're worried about their signage, anything like that. And we will literally go around the centre and almost be like mystery shoppers and mark it accordingly. And then we give feedback to one another about how we think they're doing and how they can improve.
Yep, precisely.
Yeah, I think that there's sort of quite a few important things about being in the biz groups. When you go to other people, it lets you see how other people do things, and as you say, you can look around their garden centre and give them feedback. So you get ideas from doing that. But what's also really good is when people come to your garden centre and you can say, can you look at our flow or the departments or any topic that you have a problem with or wonder about, and then you get all these people who've got years and years of experience between them looking at your garden centre for free and giving you ideas and feedback, and then you go away and you can act on these things. And I mean, I was looking the other night through. I've got a big hardback notebook that I've had since I first started in the biz groups, way back to the first noting I have is 2009, but I think that's when I got the book. Before, I think I was in the biz groups before that, and I was looking at all the feedback that we'd got from other people and all the places we'd gone and all the things we'd done. So between people coming to you and you going to other people, the things that you can do because of that learning process is enormous, absolutely enormous. When you look around your own garden centres, you guys will be the same. You can go, oh, I learned that there and I saw that there, and that's why I found that out. And it's just, it literally shapes your garden centre.
So moving on the same theme of that then, can you give us some examples of how being part of Biz has helped your business, and maybe some of the changes that you have made, or things that you have done that you've still benefit from today?
Well, the first thing was, I was like, my God, my writing is appalling. I couldn't read half of it. A lot of things are to do with, as you say, about benchmarking. So a lot of things are to do with looking at how your staff costs are to sales, your wages to sales, your margins and your profits. So, and your stock turn, sales comparisons, all that kind of stuff. So over the years, we've done that periodically, and you always come away going, oh, well, we could be better at that, or that's not very good, or oh, we're really good at that. Look at the margins on that. And you learn and you teach other people as well. We put in a loyalty scheme years ago, and then we have a loyalty card, and that's worked really, really well. I mean, there's just masses. You know, we started doing free compost deliveries in February when we saw that at another garden centre. Get all your compost sent out in February when you're quiet. And people, like, we sell about an Arctic load of compost by doing that. That was a massive thing. Our website.
I'm writing that down, Caroline.
Honestly, it's absolutely brilliant. You know, we have animals that come to visit us in the spring. We have lambs in the springtime, and then we have donkeys and alpacas and things at Christmas time. And literally the amount of business we get from having animals come and stay with us for a few days is phenomenal. It can put £1,000 on the coffee shop per day by having a few lambs come to visit you. Fixtures and fittings we've changed over the years. EPOS system we've changed with consultation with other garden centres, and honestly the list is endless. Recently, we're actually in the process of just finalising we've changed our complete flow to the garden centre to make it better, a new entrance and a new exit, and we've moved all our tills and our office at not inconsiderable expense based on BIS members when we have them to come and have a look. And we say, can you look at our flow? Where do you think our entrance should be? Where do you think our exit should be? And this was coming time and time again. This is how it should be. So we're literally, next week it'll be done, and then we can kind of see what the effect will be. The effect, I would think, would be less theft, hopefully. I mean, even today we had 2 shoplifters in. It's just like happens all the time. And better flow, so people will see every part of the garden centre. So, I mean, honestly, the list is enormous of all the things we've done.
Yep. I mean, we've been in the scheme for 35 years. So over those years, we've learned lots from bigger members and smaller members. The one thing that sticks out to my mind is when we had a meeting at our Bretby site in Burton-on-Trent, and somebody in the meeting suggested we change the in and the outdoor. And we did that instantly within a couple of days, and suddenly the whole site operated much more efficiently, much more better, flowed much better. And you think, why didn't I think of that? And sometimes you need other people to point these things out to you. They may be quite obvious. And sometimes, actually, I think you know the thing, but when somebody else tells you, suddenly it goes up a few notches in the importance because somebody else has told you that. So, from my point of view, you're never too big to learn. You can always learn from listening to other people. And also, the business improvement scheme, there's new members coming in all the time with new ideas, fresh ideas. And so you're constantly reinvigorating the groups as well. But yes, we've learned no end, cost cutting incentives and ideas, how staff promotional ideas and things like that. It's all been very valuable to us being in the business improvement scheme over the years.
I'm going to come at it from a different perspective, which is my husband and I didn't come from any horticultural background. I grew up on a farm, and he'd done a garden services business, and we kind of fell into growing and selling plants in a really small way. So we'd started out literally in car boots selling plants and from the back garden, and we wanted to have a nursery, and it was actually simply because the back garden was full of plants and I was going to have a baby. So we asked my dad and mum if we could move the plants from the garden so that we could have somewhere for the children to play. And this nursery and then garden centre evolved from that. So we had no experience about this, and it wasn't until about 2008 that one of the HTA, I think they're called member engagement officers now, popped in and said hello and invited us to join, and we were so excited about this. We didn't ever think that we would be good enough to be able to join the HTA. But more than that, he explained about the BIS. Well, it was then Retail Business Improvement Scheme, RBIS, and we literally bit his hand off because we had been sitting in bed sometimes looking at each other going, well, what are we going to do about this problem? And everything was so new, and we had no network at all. We had nobody with experience of this to talk to. So we're the tiny ones, you know, that started from nothing, and had no experience and no knowledge. And we had no idea, but we would be welcomed so much into the group. And you know, you tend to think when you're the baby in the group that you know, what are you bringing to them? But actually, people still made us welcome, and they still valued our opinion, even if we were looking at what they were doing and speaking as a customer, you know, not as somebody with a wealth of experience. But it's meant that our business has grown in ways that we would never even have dreamt of. Our business has grown because we went to first meetings, and I remember being terrified and sitting in the car park for 5 minutes because we didn't dare go into this centre that seemed so big when we were so small. But yeah, we went in and learned just, there were simple things like in 2008, we were taking people on and we didn't have contracts. We didn't know how to draw up a contract to employ someone. You know, really, really simple things like that. Help with how we should, like you're talking about flow. If we're going to set this place up, how does the flow go? We literally would not have built our garden centre without it. This year, we're hoping to do a build to have a slightly bigger building. And we wouldn't have dared do that unless we'd been part of this scheme. There's no way, because we've been around to other centres, we've spoken to everybody. We talk about whether it should be an air source heat pump or ground source heating and all sorts of things. We're going to another centre in our group at Aylsham where they've had a big development, and I should be going with my camera and asking all sorts of questions about what the doors are like and how wide they need to be. And it the list is endless about how it has changed our business.
I think Ruth is spot on there, because when we first joined, we were the baby of the group.
Yeah.
And we had people sat in my office and literally had to stand in the office because there wasn't enough room to sit, who were running at the time, garden centres that turned over several £1,000,000.
Yes.
And they were in our office, or in my office, and advising me on what I should do. And equally,
Yes.
it works the other way, that when we went to their sites, they were quite willing to listen to my ideas, even though I'd not previously run a garden centre before or anything, and would take my advice and my ideas on board as well. So it is an incredible scheme that you've got people who are turning over millions and those turning over £100,000 or maybe even less. And you're getting them all on an equal footing in a room. And, you can pick and choose the ideas that you listen to. But at the end of the end of the meeting, you've received, I think, as Carolyn said, several £1,000s worth of consultancy, and not paid a penny for it other than a few sandwiches and a cup of tea.
Yes, and it's been fun, and those people become your friends
yes,
as well. Yeah.
So if I just wind it back a little bit for everybody listening, for those that aren't aware, we currently have 7 BIS groups, and as previously mentioned, they used to be called RBIS, so Retail Business Improvement Scheme, and that's still what they are, but we just call them BIS now. We have a group in Scotland, in the north, in the Midlands, East Anglia, South East, South West, and our new South Central group as well. So we have all these different groups, and you all belong to different groups, and you have your own membership. What's really clear from hearing you all talk is that trust element that you have with the other people that you are members with in your groups with Biz. What is it that gives you that confidence when you go into a room with what people might essentially think are competitors, because they are regionally other people that are doing similar things to you, that allows you to talk so freely about ways to improve their business and to trust what they're telling you as well?
I think what you were saying was right. When I first started, I remember I went into this big room with lots and lots of people in it, and I don't think I said a word other than who I was and goodbye at the end. I was like so just like overwhelmed by the whole thing. But as you said, as you get to know people, they do become friends, and the more you give, the more you get back. So and it's quite a phenomenal situation where, you know, the garden centre that's nearest to us is probably less than half an hour. Well, yeah, 2 or 3 garden centres that are in it are probably less than half an hour away from us. So they are direct competition. But we all still feel like we want to help each other. You know, we are in competition, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like we're all in the same boat together. We're all trying to make a living. We're all trying to get better. And you really, really want to have other garden centres locally being successful. So you never feel like, oh, I'm not telling them this, I'm not telling them that. You know, we share all our figures and all our margins, and that's the only way that you can improve is by, you know, sharing all your information and then going, oh, we're quite good at that. And people will go, well, why are you so good at that? And then you go, well, I do this, this, and this. Or you go, well, my margin, that's rubbish. Why is yours so good? And then you learn. So you have to just like be completely open, and that's the way that it works, because everybody is honest with everybody else and we all help each other. That's the whole point. We help each other.
I think, as Carolyn said there, you can be in competition. Here in the West Midlands, obviously, you know, there are members 10 minutes apart, let alone half an hour apart. And it is amazing how you get on. And, I think there's a mutual respect that you may not directly copy an idea, but you may adapt it or change it in some way. But you're still learning. And so the fact that competitors, and I think the HCA actually will approach you if there's somebody directly on your doorstep, if they've applied to join and you'd rather them not. I think you do have a say in
You
who
do,
can
yes.
join the
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
But having said that, you know, I think it's very rare that we would ever object, because the more people who, you know, you are learning from them as well as them learning from yourself. So I don't think you should worry too much about the information you give. And you know, we swap figures, as you know, and what are other people going to learn from your figures, you know, other than benchmarking that you can compare your own figures against. So the competitive element, I think there's enough customers in most places that you can have 2 or 3 garden centres in a similar area and still make the scheme work for yourself, really.
Yeah, I think there's several parts about this. When you have a keen gardener, you have to accept that they will probably visit every single garden centre in the area anyway. And so they will certainly have a favourite, but they will always be looking around at other garden centres. And I'd rather be friends with those garden centres than enemies. The other wonderful thing about horticulture and being independent is that I feel that everybody in our group has their own speciality. They have things, like you say, they have things that they do well, but also they come to it with a different perspective. So for me, it's really important. I'm trying to go down the road of garden therapy and involving the community in the garden. There'll be Skylark is our garden centre in our group, and they do a maze in the summer, which is really important to them and their business. Some people will specialise more in bedding, and other people in plants. And I remember even one time having a discussion with somebody who was even thinking about reducing down their plant area. You know, and you tend to think about BIS and HTA being all about plants, but you know they were really considering how their garden centre worked and how important plants were within that. And so everybody comes to it with a different kind of angle, a different attitude, and that's the joy of being independent. And the joy of being in BIS is that you can see that and value it instead of getting fixed in your own ways. It helps you to see things from a different viewpoint. So it's such a benefit. And I have to say as well, with regard to competition, our nearest person is about 20 minutes away, and he was flooded, you know, in that terrible rain. The rain literally came off the fields and ran straight the way through the centre. All his polytunnels washed everything away, and he was left with about a foot worth of mud literally throughout the garden centre. And as soon as we all knew because we have our WhatsApp groups, as soon as we all knew the number of volunteers he had to go and help clear that mud from his garden centre, and I know that we would have done it for anyone within our group. Actually, he preferred to just work through it himself, but when we offered, we all genuinely wanted to go and help him out. So that's how important it is to look after one another, I think.
And I think the other thing with the group is if you're planning like a farm shop or you're going into catering for the first time, or pets and aquatics, there will already be somebody in the group that has gone through that pain, and developed a speciality, if you like, in some of those areas. So actually, it's a great way of expanding your business, not just within horticulture, but actually looking at all the bits of the garden centre that hang off horticulture. Whether you're looking for a new gift supplier or a new card supplier, anything like that, the business improvement scheme is a great way of just under any other business saying, look, I'm going into whatever. Has anybody got any insights for me? And you'll be amazed at what people have done in the past or currently doing.
So, the other thing to mention is obviously, as well as the amazing peer-to-peer feedback that you give during these meetings, you do also have a consultant that is there for your biz meetings to help support facilitating the meeting and any questions you might have. Part of the role of the consultant, like we've mentioned several times before, is this benchmarking. So the HCA use a benchmarking tool, which you guys will input monthly figures into, and then you can compare them at your biz meetings. What is it that you get from that consultant-led look at the sales figures? Because I know quite often sometimes you go, if you said to someone, oh, you sit down and you compare sales figures, that can seem pretty boring and a little bit scary, but it plays an important role, doesn't it, in what you get from biz?
I think because there's a professional consultant there, they got an insight into lots of other businesses as well as your own. So there may be 12 or 15 businesses sat around the table at that particular meeting, but because you've got the professional there, they will either have worked or currently working with other businesses that may be sometimes a lot bigger, sometimes not. So they will give sometimes a national insight into the figures that you're looking at. They will certainly have a lot of other benchmarking exercises they've done in the past with other businesses. And of course, it's not just about the figures that we submit every month. Sometimes we'll have special projects on. So I think either Ruth or Carolyn there mentioned about comparing our wage figures. We may look at energy costs and all of those things. And obviously energy has been a big issue in the last 18 months. And it's been really useful that when we've met, we have discussed energy suppliers, energy saving methods and things like that. So yes, looking at figures might sometimes be boring, but actually I suppose that's what we're all in it for, is to make sure we love gardening, don't we? But actually we need to keep our businesses afloat and keep moving forward. So actually, we can be benchmarking, but also it can be live information as well. So, when energy rates went up, as I say, we were looking at that. With the living wage going up, we're looking at cost saving methods to reduce either hours worked or the headcount. And the business improvement scheme can help us with practical ways on how to address those. But certainly the professional consultant not only brings an outside insight, it also means the meetings are moving forward at a reasonable pace, because sometimes it can, without the professional consultant, it could become just a chit chat over a cup of coffee, but actually the professional consultant moves it forward.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I would say we have Alison Hayward as our consultant at the moment, and we've had Andy Campbell in the past. But Alison described it to me as herding cats. Joe, that was when we went on our tour, and she was trying to get us all back on the bus, but we were all just busy chatting and going around like investigating everything, and that is what it is like, especially as you get to know people better, and basically we look forward to each meeting because we go with like a little list of questions, so we don't necessarily bring it up at the meeting, but I'll go, I must talk to so and so about who they use for alpines. or where they get their camellias from. I don't need to bring it up at a meeting, but I want to catch them. And if we didn't have that consultant there who was running the meeting properly, I think it would all degenerate into like a bit of a muddle. But going back to the figures as well, is not only is it consultant led, but we have those so that when we enter those figures, we can look to see what other people have entered. So you can only see the figures if you have been prepared to enter them yourself. That's really important to say. So until I enter July's figures, I won't see anybody else's July figures. But then when I enter my figures, then I'm really keen to compare how I'm doing. And that's actually something that's so important, and that another person raised when I asked about was there anything that they felt was important to them. And they said it's that sometimes you think you're having a really bad month or a bad season, and then you go in and you enter your figures, and what you actually see is that everybody is having a bad season or a bad month, and that makes it so much easier to manage. But then again, if you're going against the trend one way or another, you either can sit back and go, well, this is something I've done personally, or oh dear, I really need to buck my ideas up. But we can access those figures by logging in at any time, and that's invaluable.
A key point to mention there as well is that when you become a BIS member, you have a slightly different accessing to the overall benchmarking that you get as being an HCA member, and that is seeing those detailed regional figures, which you don't get. You don't just get an overall benchmarking. You get that detail, which you don't, anyone else outside BIS does not get. And each BIS member have their own unique code, which you identify them by, and that allows you to really compare with your customer base as a region. You can see what your customer base is doing and how you compare with other businesses, which you don't get in any other setting. So let's move on to talk a little bit about the BIS study tours, which everyone does really enjoy. And I know, Gerald and Ruth, you've just been on one for this year. So the study tour is a way that we get the BIS groups together, so groups that wouldn't normally be meeting, and they get to go on a trip and look at other centres, other businesses that are relevant to BIS, centres of excellence, or those that are doing something completely differently. And a bit like a giant BIS meeting, lots of you go along and you get to give feedback and you get some talks and spend time together and learn from each other. So is there anything about the study tours that you three would like to mention?
Well, we've got ours coming up. We're going to Dublin in September. And I've been on, oh God, I don't know how many, loads and loads and loads of study tours. I think that's, for us, that's one of the best parts of being in the group is kind of being forced to go away from your own business for 2 or 3 days, seeing lots of garden centres, one after the other over that time, and taking photos and making notes and making plans and sitting on the bus and talking to other people and making a list of all the things you're going to do when you get back, because it's like it's such a good use of 2 or 3 days out of your working week, because you just cram so much into it. And for us, I think that's one of the best parts of it is are the study tours. And I say we've been on loads and loads all over the country, and every single one we come back with masses of ideas. So yeah, we love them. For us, it's just like we're going on holiday. It's just a holiday. We love it.
Yeah, I mean we've done two of the recent study tours. So last year we went to Dublin, and this time we did a tour of Scotland. We find it a great way of taking some of our staff. So it's a great training aid, and it's a great way of getting to know people on a much better level. Even our own staff, by the end of the 2 days, you get to know far more about them than you do when you're working alongside them. So we found that the study tours a great way of seeing new centres in some cases that we've heard about for the last 20 years and how good they are. Actually, it's really good to actually go there, see the centres, and some fantastic good practice that we've been able to see as well, that you just simply can't either learn from your own group, or you'd have to travel miles and miles and miles to do it. But this is a nice social way. So normally it involves, well, obviously it involves a night away. So there's a social aspect to it. In any case, as it's already been said, we're on a coach together, so you're mixing, and in our case, we mix with the East Anglia group, which is how I've got to know Ruth, through that. So it's also, it's a great way of putting a face to a name that you might have heard of, but now you get to know them in a much closer level, really. So the coach trip has been, or the study tour has been a great way of getting to know more about the trade.
Yeah, I would say, if I'm honest, that me and Paul, my husband, were really worried about going on the trips to begin with. And it wasn't because we were worried about meeting the people. We knew that they would be lovely and we would wanted to go. But when you're small, it's actually really hard because you're often a keystone in the business. So if you go away, you have to make sure that there's somebody that can do your job. Now, I remember Gerald on the bus answering the phone and having to deal with all sorts of issues. So I know that it's not just small businesses that have that issue, but I think when you are small, you're really afraid to step away. And so that was really hard. We've got a wonderful team. There's only a few of them, but they are really wonderful. And as long as we've got enough people on the ground, then it's great. But one of the massive learning curves about that is that we've got a team that are good enough to do this. If both of us go away, the whole thing doesn't collapse. It's fine. And that's a really good learning curve in itself. And so, yeah. But I know there are different people, in the groups that sometimes do find it hard to leave either family or the business. But I would say that just stepping away is absolutely vital, because when you've been around 10 it was kind of 8 garden centres in 2 days, wasn't it, Gerald?
That's
It
right.
was.
Yes, yeah.
When you've been around that many centres, you come back with different eyes on. So you walk through your own gate or into your own shop with a completely different focus. I can't explain it, but you literally have that different sense and analysis and way of looking at what you do and go, oh, actually, yeah, it's not just the ideas that you've brought home, but you see your own centre from a different perspective, and that's really amazing.
Yeah, I think Caroline's in for a real treat when she gets to Dublin.
Yes.
Hopefully, you're going to Windy Ridge, and
Yes, you have to go
it
there.
was fascinating because Windy Ridge is the entrance is sandwiched between two houses. It's literally almost a single car entrance in there. It trades out of polytunnels, and what they've done with their polytunnels is incredible. I think and
Really?
they turn over, I think it was 8 million euros from their garden centre. So I think just to see that shows everybody what is achievable with just a bit of imagination. And that was just one of the centres that we visited.
Yeah,
And obviously, when we were in Scotland, it was
Yeah.
just as inspirational. So, the study trips are really important, I think.
And I think it's really important as well for the groups to be able to spend that time together and learn from each other, because having that regional support is invaluable, and you need that absolutely. But sometimes just having another region's input and problems and being able to see how they've done things, and then the both of you or several groups going to somewhere completely different, it actually, like you say, Ruth, it completely opens your eyes. And going off Caroline's point there as well, a really important aspect of biz is the actual meeting. So you have 5 meetings a year and you attend it in person. They're not virtual meetings, they are physical meetings. And that is really important, to actually have that time, like the study tour, away from your own business, unless you're hosting, where you commit that time to go and have these conversations, and you're not, you haven't got a knock on the door, someone going, can I just ask this? Can we just do that? And actually it is then a whole day where you get to focus on changes and growth and the things that sometimes, I think you mentioned it earlier, Gerald, how you have these ideas, but they're never at the top of your list to do because there's always so much else to do, where these are the moments where you get to focus on them because you've committed to spending that day away from your own business.
Yeah, what we do is on the way back, whether it's the train or the plane or whatever, we sit there and we have a rule that we have made a list before we get home in priority of what we're going to do. So you literally get back home and you go, right, point one, this is what I'm going to do tomorrow. So we always come back with a list of things that we definitely do in priority. So the bottom one might be a while later, but you have a plan which makes you do it. You would never off your own back going, I'm going to visit 8 garden centres tomorrow and the next day. You would just never do it because there's always something more pressing. But if the date's in the diary and the flight's booked, you're going.
And we Andy always used to do that at the end of our meetings, our regional meetings as well. He used to say, okay, he used to go around the table and say one thing that each of you is going to take back and do in your own centre. And it really focused the mind because you had to stand up and say what it was to everybody else.
And then the next meeting they say, did you do it?
Yes, exactly. So, but we do also have our WhatsApp groups as well, which are valuable. And that gives you instant answers to questions. Sometimes I dread to say it, staffing issues. Sometimes, but there'll always be all sorts of things. But on our WhatsApp, there'll be have you got the number 4? But there'll also be things like, something terrible's just happened. I don't know what to do, and people will chip it. It's literally. I put a thing up yesterday. I'm coming on this on Hort-Talk. Is there anything you think that I should mention? Is there anything you'd like me to say? And is it all right if I mention your garden centres by name? And literally, I had so many replies within an hour. Isn't that that is amazing? And we also play, which is probably not really part of the remit, but we also play Guess Where I Am. If one of us is visiting another one's centre, we take a picture and post it on and see if people can work out where we are. But that's maybe you want to edit that, Alex.
No, I like that. It's good. It's a good idea. And actually, Ruth, you've led me really nicely into the next question. I'll drop the fiver off to you later. I was actually going to ask a little bit about the WhatsApp and the communication that you have as groups outside of those actual meeting times. Has there been an occasion where you've thought, I'm so pleased I've got this group here that I can ask that question? Or actually, if I didn't have a biz group to WhatsApp right now, I think I would have got myself into a right state. Is there an example you can give where actually you feel that's been really important?
Definitely. Are you asking me?
All of you, sorry.
Okay. I can think of one straight away, but it's a little bit sensitive. But it was basically to do with the staffing issue, and we'd got 2 youngsters that had been using their mobile phone to film at the nursery without permission and then post it on social media, and not in an appropriate manner. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness, what do I do? And that but they're the kind of things, that's how personal it can be, and that's the kind of a very difficult thing, where do you go for that kind of help? So yeah, and I know technically that might have been a legal question, but actually sometimes you can deal with these things better in a more roundabout way, and I'm sure it's the sort of thing that happens in all sorts of work settings, and so sometimes a chat with those people is enough of what you need, or do you need to start a disciplinary process? It's more, have you had this, how did you deal with it, that kind of thing. Yeah, definitely.
And one of the last things we had, which actually was really useful, was one of the garden centres said, how do you cost your delivery service? Which is like a minefield, because some people do it per mile, some people do it, they have a pin in the map where they are, and they do 5 miles away, 10 miles away, or how long it takes to get somewhere. Some of them do free delivery over so much. And we had this big, long chat about who does what and how you do it. And it was really interesting. And some of the people who maybe felt they weren't charging enough, but were scared to put it up, when other people said, oh yeah, we charge X amount, and it's really expensive, it's a staff member, it's a van, all that is really costly. I'm like, oh, I'm going to put my price up then, I'm far too cheap, no wonder I've got deliveries every day of the week. So there's a balance, because obviously you want to, some people need deliveries, and other people will just take advantage of the fact you're cheap. So you don't want to lose a sale, but you don't want to be going out with a one hydrangea 20 minutes away. So that was a long chat back and forth, but it was probably really useful to a lot of us.
Yeah.
And of course, the person who asked the question is learning, but so is everybody else.
Everybody,
so
yeah.
it isn't just the person who asked the question who's got the problem. We all learn from that.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think you have to be mindful that you may not be a legal genius, as Ruth said there, but actually we just, you have to pick out, don't you, the route that you're going to take when you answer these questions, when you put into practice the answers that you're getting. But yes, I mean, if we think about it, if we weren't a member of the business improvement scheme, what a lonely job and what a lonely life we would have had, because suddenly you've got a dozen friends basically on your shoulder that you can turn to and ask a simple question of, or just a bit of moral support, as I think Ruth said. If you're having a quiet time, suddenly you realize, when by comparing the figures, everybody's probably in a similar boat. So it takes the loneliness out of potentially what could be a very isolating business to run and to work, really.
Yes.
So my final question today is, if someone came to you and said, I'm thinking about joining Biz, what would your answer be?
Should have joined it years ago.
Yes, you'll never regret it. And that was one of the things that came through on my WhatsApp conversation yesterday. I'm going to quote some people. So Wendy from Thaxter said she's been a member for 15 years and she always takes something away from every meeting. So it's, however, whenever you join, you will pick up so much, and it's not something where you join and you think, oh, I've got enough out of it now, because it never stops. And the industry is changing, our work environments are changing, and the learning just never stops. And so being part of that group is just beyond, it's priceless for us, really.
As I said at the beginning, we've been in the scheme 35 years. We were the smallest when we joined. We're now the largest in our group, but we still learn. And and you're learning by the new people coming into the industry, because they're bringing new ideas with them. You're learning from the smaller players, because they are very practical with their interpretation of the problems that they're facing, and we are facing the problem as well. So it's a real good insight. And we also use the scheme, as I said earlier, for staff training. So our managers of our sites actually will now go to the meetings. So we use the business improvement scheme as a training aid for them, because suddenly they're running, because it's almost as though you are running other people's businesses. When you go and visit them for the day, you suddenly step into their shoes and you're looking at their business through their shoes, I suppose, really. And so actually, for a staff training exercise, it's really good. If you want to put something into practice in your own site and you might be a little bit nervous about doing that, actually, when you've got other people telling you the same thing, you have got a bit of ammunition to go to your team and say, look, we've had all the half a dozen garden centres come and visit us today, and they've suggested we're doing this. It actually gives you that bit of ammunition to go out there and put those changes into place.
I don't think the question is why should I join the Biz group? The question is why wouldn't you?
Nice. I like that. I'm going to use that. Why wouldn't you use this?
I can also say that it's solved various arguments between me and my husband over the years. because I'll come up with an idea and want to do something and he won't, and vice versa. And then we go to the biz group and we put it to somebody or several people or the group, and it gets decided for us with no hard feelings.
Come on then, Ruth, tell us which one is normally right. Is it you?
I wouldn't like to say. You'll have to ask the rest of the group what they think.
Fantastic. Well, before I wrap up today's session, is there anything anyone would like to add about being a biz member?
Yes. Sorry.
Go for
There
it.
is
Please
one
do.
thing,
Yeah.
and that is because there are lots of regional groups and because we do the tours, I think it makes you more aware of the industry as a whole and the problems that we face as a whole. And I've never really felt like that in any other environment, if that makes sense. So when we went to Scotland, we're listening to their issues about the climate. And I was talking to somebody from Northern Ireland a few weeks ago, and he was talking about the importing difficulties, which I know is a major issue for horticultural industry at the moment, but that they are facing them in different ways. You know, they're facing difficulties getting imports from other parts of the UK, and so it makes as because you're part of something bigger than just you. It also, and because you're moving around the country and doing tours as well, it just definitely has that sense of bringing people together within the industry and the commonality of the problems we face and the good things that we enjoy too. So that's what I feel it brings too.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. The one thing I'd also like to say to our listeners is, as well as BIS, we also have NBIS, which is our Nursery Business Improvement Scheme, which is the same format, but for our grower members. So just looking at benchmarking and the issues that our nursery members might have. And we also have RDF, which stands for Retail Development Forum, which is a very similar format to BIS, but for slightly larger turnover businesses, and there's less of the peer-to-peer feedback and more of the sales aspect, a little bit more of the business aspect involved in RDF as well. And we are about to launch a second RDF group nationally, just to make you aware of those. So if anyone is interested in joining BIS, then please do get in contact with training@hca.org.uk. But I would like to say thank you very much to my three very special guests today for being part of Hort-Talk. This has been episode 20, HCA Business Improvement Schemes. Stay safe, everyone. Take care.